The quality of a person's life is in direct proportion to their commitment to excellence, regardless of their chosen field of endeavor. Vince Lombardi. 1-point perspective, frame, horizon line, and vanishing point. Hi everybody, welcome to Environment Sketching, and thanks for signing up for the course. This is instructor Phil Demetriadis. Please feel free to call me Phil, and you can email me and ask me any questions if you have any during the length of the course here. Let me go ahead, I'm going to get set up here. What I'm going to do, I'm going to start today's lecture off by just going over some basics. Some of you have some background and perspective. I'm going to go ahead and start off here. I'm going to start talking about 1-point perspective. First thing we're going to do as we're working here is we're going to start with a frame. This is really important. Let's always have a dedicated frame drawn around our work. A lot of times with students, they tend to skip this phase, and it's a really important aspect to framing up our work because our frame actually indicates a lot to the viewer. It dictates size relationships, and it helps dictate angle of view, and especially it helps us arrange our composition in our piece. Okay. So what I'm going to do here, let me get all set up here. I'm going to take a ruler here. I'm drawing on a Cintiq, okay, and I'm working in Sketchbook Pro. I'm just going to draw a couple horizon lines across here, and I'm going to go ahead and just pick a really simple 1-point vanishing point here. Okay, give me a second. I'm going to label my horizon line as HL. Some of you might call it an eye level. That's just fine. The way I was brought up around it and the way my education background, I was taught to think of it as horizon line, because your eye level can be different sometimes, and you can be standing on a cliff, let's say, but you might be in relationship to a horizon line. I can go over that a little bit later. I'm going to go ahead and sketch in here with a couple of vanishing points. Okay, what I'm doing right now is I'm just taking using the pen tool in Sketchbook Pro, which is a great drawing application, and I'm just drawing a series of lines that are receding back to that vanishing point. I'm actually using a plastic flex ruler that I use on my Cintiq, and I just use that to draw to get straight lines. Some of you are pretty familiar with Sketchbook Pro. There's a new version of it out. It costs, I believe they had it on sale for like $30, and there's actually a ruler tool in it. Whenever I sketch and draw, I still go back to using just a traditional ruler for a couple of reasons. Number one, I was trained in a traditional format, and number two, it's a lot faster than using the current ruler tool that's available. Okay, we don't want to draw any diagonals at this time. We shouldn't have any diagonals like this whatsoever. This would be indicating that we're working into 2-point perspective with a secondary vanishing point. We're not going to be going that direction right now. What we want to have are horizontal lines. Okay, these lines that are going to be drawn inside our composition here. Okay, I'm going to just recede these back here to my horizon line. Okay, and establish a loose grid. And I establish this grid because it helps me think about my spatial relationships, and it gives me something to draw on. You never want to start drawing with just an empty piece of paper. It's intimidating, especially white empty paper is just, you look at it and naturally you feel this empty feeling with just all this whiteness, right? So a way to solidify that is just to come in and place down a horizon line, pick a vanishing point, and throw down a grid line. And just doing that simple little phase right there allows us to really add a lot to our work. Okay, give me a second here. I'm going to get set up here in just a second. So in case you were wondering, can you work in this class in a traditional manner? That's just fine if you'd like to. Okay, if you would like to work on paper and scan your work in, that's totally acceptable. Okay, what I'm doing right here is I'm just sort of noting the placement of the horizon line. One is up a little bit higher and one is down a little bit lower. Okay, what I'm doing really quick now, I'm going to come in here, I'm just going to sketch in a cube shape. Okay, and the importance of this is that I want you to understand how this cube exists inside its space. You'll notice on the image below, okay, my horizon line is so much lower. If I sketch in a cube, I'm probably going to be looking up at it, okay, versus on the other image I was looking down on it. Okay, let's move into talking about the transference of scale here. Okay, all right, transferring scale, basically it's a perspective term that is our way of measuring and understanding height relationships inside our environments. Okay, I'm going to start off here. I'm going to draw a horizon line here. Let me get this all set up for you. I'm going to start sketching for you. One second, guys. This can get a little, whenever I'm working at the same time and drawing, sometimes I can click a wrong button here or get on the wrong layer. So let me get this set up here. Okay. So let's talk about transference to scale. Okay, this is really important because whenever we draw an environment, we have to have a good idea of exactly what height relationships are taking place in our environment. It's pretty common with students; they tend to overdraw or misrepresent their environments and their height relationships environment. So this is a great way that we can go into our work and we can solidify this. I'm going to draw the height of a person here, and I'm going to just pick my vanishing point, and I'm going to recede a blue line from the top of that individual back through the feet of the individual back to my vanishing point. Then along these blue lines, anywhere that I come inside my piece here, I can establish the height of that individual moving back inside perspective. Okay, this is really important. A lot of artists and a lot of, I'm going to say this term, online artists that are out there, I see this happening a lot, especially in like DeviantArt and a bunch of other websites where artists don't have any proper training in draftsmanship or perspective, and when they dive into environments, their scale's wrong and messed up. So let's go ahead and transfer our scale sideways here. Okay, to do that, I'm going to draw a line from the top, the height of my individual. I'm going to draw a line from the feet of my individual. Once I get that line across there, I'm going to draw my individual. So that would be the height of my individual going from left to right. Of course, since we are in one-point perspective, there's going to be no transference of scale or no conversion of scale if I'm moving my individual horizontally. Okay, all right. Okay. However, though, if I move my individual in the z depth closer towards the horizon line, or if I move them closer towards the viewer here, there's going to be a change in height here, as you can see. Okay, so this is a good way to come back and look at and figure out your height relationships. In every piece that I do, in any sketch I do for any client, one of the first things that I do as I start sketching, well, sometimes I might throw down a couple shapes to have a good understanding of what the size relationships are. Okay, but then I come back and I make sure things line up here. For example, look at how I'm sketching a house right here, right? Obviously, this individual, if they're standing next to this house, would be way too tall because we now have something to measure our relationship to. We have the size of the door, okay? All right? And that's an important thing to think about here. So obviously, let's say if I were to make these telephone wires, right? That might make some more sense inside my piece here, instead of having the indication that this would be the height relationship of somebody standing. Okay, so I'd either have to go back in here and make my house larger, okay, to fit the doorway around that individual, or I'd have to go in here and modify it another way. Okay, so here's just a quick sample of us taking a look at transferring scale in one-point perspective. If you have any questions, we can cover this in the Q&A. Let's talk about adjusting scale side to side. Okay? Give me a second here. Let me get set up. Usually when I do my demos for you guys, I'm talking live and recording. When I made this particular demo, I had a problem with the microphone, and there was a lot of popping in the microphone. So I decided to go back, and I'm doing a voiceover narration on it now for you. Okay? All right, give me a second here. Let me get this set up. All right? So let's talk about transferring our scale now, side to side here. Okay? And this is scale to scale transference. I want to take this image right here. I want to draw this over. I basically just measure with my ruler, and I can bring it over and have it exact. And the reason why there's no transference of scale right now is because I'm moving it horizontally. So I can take this, let's say this was a piece of wood, or maybe a railroad tie, or a piece of tile. I wanted to figure out a tile floor. I'm coming in and I'm measuring with my ruler, and I'm transferring that same relationship just over, taking the exact measurement of, what was I at there? I think I was an inch and something in US size, and I'm just bringing it over. Okay, and let's come up here and let's look at what would happen. Give me a second here. Let's get this drawn up here. Grab the wrong. Okay. So I'm going to come over here, same thing. just going to show you, let's say up here I had a sidewalk. I want to measure the side of the sidewalk going back in perspective. I'm going to come over, take my first measurement, and I just continue it over and bring it to the side here. Okay? Same thing, if I want to go to the right here again, I just continue that over one more time, and I bring that over. Alright, let's talk about adjusting and moving scale. Let me get set up. Let's get a horizon line set up here. I have a tendency to talk pretty fast in my demos, guys, so it's sort of fun to come back and work a little bit slower. I'm establishing my horizon line here. Okay, I'm going to indicate VP1, my vanishing point there. It's always really helpful to do that, to mark them. That way you don't forget, especially if you're doing lots of drawings or sketches. You might accidentally get another dot or two on your line and you forget exactly where your VP is. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to draw the height, 2 lines receding back to my vanishing point. I'm going to sketch in a rough cube shape here. Okay, just bear with me for a second. Let me get this all taken care of. Alright. Alright. If some of you guys notice a little beeping in a couple of my demos, there's a little beeping happening. I apologize for that. That beeping sound, everybody, is what happens when I press the shift button on the keyboard to generate a straight line. And so after a while I got tired of that beeping and I completely moved to my ruler. Okay, so if you hear that, I apologize. That's just what the software does when I'm recording. Puts a little beep in there. What I'm going to do here is I want to show you in adjusting scale here. How do we adjust scale if I have an individual that's standing on the left hand side here and I want to draw that individual standing on top of this box? How do I figure out what that individual's scale, height, and relationship is? How do I transfer their height to the top of this box? So imagine if I was doing a sketch right here and I had some type of giant city, let's say, okay? And inside this giant city, I might have the emperor up above on some type of architecture platform. And I need to have his scale relationship established in there. Okay, I'm going to show you how we would figure this out, how we would establish that transference to scale. Okay, how we adjust scale and move it around inside our set. Okay, alright, so give me a second here. Let me get this all set up for you. Let me get my ruler going here. What I'm going to do is draw from where that individual would be standing. I'm going to come to the edge of the box here. I'm going to bring my line down to the base of the box to where it hits the ground plane. And then I'm going to bring that line over and across horizontally. Okay? And then I'm going to see where it hits that line of that individual. Now, it's not hitting the feet of the individual, but you can see that transference line that I receded back to the vanishing point. So I can come back in here and draw the height of that individual now and see what their relationship is, basically them standing back 3 feet. I'm going to come back and draw a line from the top of that individual to where it hits the line that I dropped down from the box. And I could basically just measure the height of them right there and just move that and draw it up. Okay? Or I could even come right underneath here, underneath the box if I wanted to. There's no real change. I'm going to take the height of that individual that's right there. And I'm just going to grab that and move that, and I can measure that. And I can place it right on top of the box. And that relationship right there is going to be how tall my individual is standing right up here on top of the box. Okay? Alright. That's really simple. That is adjusting my scale. Okay? Let's go in. What about somebody that might be standing back here? Okay. Let me get this set up for you. Okay. I'm imagining this person's on a little bit of a platform here. So I'm going to bring a line down from the box, draw it over, find out what the height relationship of that person is. Bring that back down here. Draw their height right in here. Come in and take that, and I'm going to transfer that and place that right up there on the same point. Okay? Hope that makes sense for you guys. I hope you understand. That's important to understand exactly how height relationships change. Okay? Alright? let's try, let me come in here and sketch in a little hill shape here. So because I understand the height relationship down below, I have a good understanding of how that individual would be up on a hill, especially in one-point perspective when I can use horizontal methods to measure and figure out exactly how my scale is transferring throughout my set here. Okay? And after a while of doing this and working in perspective, you get good at this and you can figure it out. However, though, like I said, I still come back and I do this, especially with low angle shots. A lot of times when you have a really low angle shot where your horizon line is really low, you're going to have a lot of convergence that happens really quick between the foreground going all the way to the background. In that particular instance, on a low angle shot, it might be hard for us to see the transference of scale that's happening. And we can easily draw doorways too big, we can make props too large, streets too large, light posts too big. And we need to come in and do an overlay sketch like this to really establish and figure out how our scale is moving, okay, and transferring across in our piece. Okay? Excuse me. Alright guys, let me finish this up here. So, again, take a overlook at this and you can see all the adjustments of scale within this. Took me a couple minutes. It's worth doing on any piece or sketch that you're doing to figure out how your perspective is working. Okay? Alright, let's get ready to talk about the cone of vision here. Alright? Perspective 101, moving forward. Okay? Even though this is environment sketching, just giving you guys a quick little relapse in background on perspective here. Okay? Some of you might have had a perspective course at another school, and some of you had a perspective course, the new one that was offered here at CGMA. And a lot of times in our classes here at school, we get 3D artists that are might have had art school training, but they might have had it 10, 15 years ago, and they've been working in the industry now as a 3D artist in either lighting or modeling, and they want to get familiar and expand some of their drawing skills. And that's pretty common. I also work in 3D myself. I model in Maya quite often, and I mainly model, I draw and sketch up sets, and then I model sets for different types of productions. So I've had a lot of friends that come from a 3D background, and their perspective is really horrible. So it's really fantastic to go in here and talk about. Okay, what I'm doing here right now is I have a horizon line placed down. I have a vanishing point set up. We're going to be talking about the cone of vision. What the cone of vision basically is an area of distortion that's going to exist inside one point perspective. Remember earlier when I was drawing the scale of lines side by side? Okay, when I draw that outside of the cone of vision, I get an area of distortion happening in my shape that doesn't look right. So bear with me here and let me show you here. Okay, I'm going to pick what some people might call like a stationary point. What I've done is I've come from my vanishing point and I've drawn a straight line right down here. Okay, and let me explain this to you too. When I get down to my stationary point here, okay, I'm used to seeing things at 90-degree angles. Okay, so when I'm drawing, if I come in here and I draw a cube, all right, and it's right in front of my vanishing point, it's going to have 90-degree angles that make sense. One of the problems is, that's why I'm drawing this little map over here, okay, sort of explain the cone of vision. Cone of vision exists in the 60-degree angle here, okay. So if I draw a line straight across, I find my 90, and I come in here and I find a 30, or 45 pretty much on each side, and I come in a little bit and I measure, I can establish a 60-degree angle right here. Okay, that 60-degree angle right here is known as your cone of vision. Okay, I can grab this cone of vision, and if I pull it back, that's just fine. It just widens up the 60-degree bars. Okay, so if I come in this over here and I draw a cone shape right here, okay, this pretty much represents what a lot of artists call the cone of vision. And once I get outside of this cone of vision is when I start to get distortion happening in my perspective. Okay, excuse me, been fighting a cold, guys, and I have a little bit of a cough still. So the benefit of understanding this cone of vision and how it works inside perspective is that, especially in 1-point, in a lot of 2-point perspective drawings, and in the Q&A, what we'll do is we'll talk about, I'll give you some examples of how we break the cone of vision and when it looks awful inside a piece. Once we get too far outside of that cone of vision, let me give you a little example here, okay? We have a series of equal spaces here that have been drawn out, okay? So I'm just transferring scale, moving it horizontally here, all right? They're all the same distance, okay? So now, right now, we don't really notice anything happening inside the cone of vision here, okay? Bear with me for a second, all right? Let me get this drawn up here. Get it all measured. I'm measuring it as I'm going here with my trusty see-through plastic ruler, okay? I love these things. They're bendable. They come in a couple different sizes. They're great for drawing on Cintiqs. They work great on... if you don't have a Cintiq, that's totally fine. I still draw traditionally quite often. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to recede back and create square shapes on every one of my lined increments here. Okay, I'm going to create a little square. Okay, and what you'll start to notice as I recede these lines back to my vanishing point here, my squares that are outside of the cone of vision are going to start to feel larger than the other square shapes. Let me finish this for you here, okay? So why is this important, guys? Some of you have learned this and forgot it, okay? Some of you never even apply this when you work. There are drawing tests given by studios where they go out and they make you on purposely have to draw like the interior of a cafeteria or the interior of a library, and they on purposely put part of the test out of the cone of vision. Now you'll notice here, okay, look at my square shapes that are to the far right and left of my cone of vision, the ones like this one I'm drawing right here. Look at how distorted this is. I have a series of angles in there, okay, that don't really make sense. They are acute and obtuse angles. Okay, when I look at my shapes closer, my squares inside that circle right there, they feel more comfortable and they feel like squares. They feel like they are related to each other. Okay, but once I get further out there, okay, especially, let's talk about, especially when I'm further out here to the side here, I get these acute angles. So what's an acute angle? An acute angle is anything less than 90, and an obtuse right here is anything greater than 90. Okay, so you can see my square shapes to the right of my circle here. All right, they have angles in them that are less than 90 and greater than 90. Okay, and it throws them off. Look at here. This is almost at about a 90. And let's look in here. This isn't too bad. It's getting scrunched a little bit. It's slightly out, but that feels about like a 90, even though it's getting a little bit greater. But look at that angle to the right there. And then look at the angles inside here. And then that's where you really start to notice this changeover, especially right in here. Look at that. That's a pretty obtuse angle right there. That's much greater than 90. And this is less than 45. It's probably like a 30-degree angle. And so now I've created this distortion where some of my outside shapes actually end up looking larger than my shapes that are inside the middle. Okay? That shape right there is distorted. Okay? And it's distorted, guys, folks, people. I say guys sometimes out of habit. If you're female, I no offense there. This is completely distorted compared to this inner shape right here. Okay? That is the same shape though. This shape here is the same exact square as the shape as that square circled in the side of the middle there. The only difference is this is outside of the cone of vision. And since it's outside of the cone of vision, it has a lot more distortion to it. And when I look at it, I can really start to notice some of this distortion. Okay, it's important to understand this when you guys are sketching, because there might be a time when you have to pull back your stationary points, and basically you're expanding out your cone of vision. Okay, and there's a point when the cone of vision gets where we don't want to do that, and we want to keep everything that we have, and that's when we have to sort of make the transition into two-point perspective. Okay, because things are getting so distorted, the sides of those the lines, the sidelines of these shapes outside of the cone of vision, they want to start converging to their own vanishing point. And that's when we get a second vanishing point created. And that would be the same thing if I move over to the far left. Those lines want to start converging to another vanishing point. And yes, I can describe this for you in the Q&A. We can have 3 vanishing points existing up there. That's how there's a traditional pan that we draw. Okay, so let's look at this right here. Okay, all these shapes right here. And you can see, I'm going to go ahead and I want to start converging that. That's what that shape wants to start doing. It wants to start converging to that second vanishing point right there. Okay? Alright? It wants to turn. And if I don't turn it, I get that distortion that you see over on the 3 squares on the right-hand side here. Okay? That's important to think about and to consider as you're working. Alright? If I come back here and pull my station point back, all I'm doing is increasing, okay, the cone of vision there. I'm just basically, does that make sense? If I grab that and pull it back on a dolly, I'm just increasing that circle shape, as you can see. Okay? Just like that. Alright? All the same principles still apply. Okay? And I know that might confuse some of you guys. But as you get into perspective and you start drawing a little bit more, some of you are like, well, what's my station point? Your station point basically is your frame that you're framing up around your piece. Okay? Let's move over right now. Let's talk about proportional division. Okay, this is another important element here for perspective. All right? So again, I'm going to start off here. I'm going to draw a horizon line here. Okay? Create a vanishing point. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to draw a box up here in a plane view for us. Okay? And orthographic plane view, meaning there's no perspective. Think of this as a top view. Okay, I want to show you. I have a box right here. And in proportional division, if I want to take this box, and this, I can do it in a top view first. And if I want to duplicate this and draw it one more over, I need to go in and can draw 2 lines across, find the middle, can draw a line across here, and then in proportional division, if I come over and I take a line, and I connect from the corner here, and I come through that middle point that I found right there, and if I draw the baseline across, I will basically figure out where they hit right here, the next box shape. Okay, that's the same distance as there to there. Okay, now I'm in a top view here, right? If I wanted to in my top view, I could have just measured it over. But I'm showing you this in a top view with no perspective because then we're going to go in and we're going to do it in perspective. Okay? And if you look here and I draw this over, that's now the second duplication of that box. So let's do it now in perspective. Okay? I'm going to draw a couple blue trace lines here. This is important to understand, guys, because this is how we would draw tiles going back in perspective. This is how we figure out how we draw telephone poles going back in perspective. Archways, especially Roman archways, if you have any type of interior with a series of archways that are duplicating themselves, receding back in perspective. I use this quite a bit with wood tiles and tile floor. Okay, something important to know. So let me start here. I'm going to start with a simple square shape. I'm in 1 point perspective. I have my horizon line drawn. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cross.